On this news review, the new U.S. administration is reportedly planning to review Washington's policies toward the Israeli occupation of Palestine. A memo which revealed to an Arab daily says the Biden administration will push for a two-state solution based on the pre-1967 lines with mutually agreed land swaps. The memo shows the United States is planning to announce a $15 million aid package for Palestinians to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. Washington also plans to roll back some policies, such as U.S. legitimizing of Israeli settlement activities in the occupied territories. The previous U.S. administration, under President Donald Trump, had given the green light to Israel to embark on its agenda, including settlement constructions. Washington also relocated its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem al-Quds in a move that sparked international outcry. Joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have Mr. Mick Napier from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign joining us from Edinburgh. Also, we have author and Middle East affairs expert Saeb Shaath joining us from Belfast. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start off with Mr. Napier in Edinburgh. Give us your thoughts on the details that have been reviewed in this memo. How much is there really to change for a U.S. administration when it comes to the U.S.-Israeli ties?
Well, I think it's back to the future. Biden obviously has decided to distinguish between Trump's alliance with Netanyahu and the much deeper and longer-lasting U.S. strategic alliance with Israel. So Biden has a few grudges against Netanyahu, and we'll see them come into play. But underlying this, we have to remember that Biden was vice president when Obama, following multiple humiliations from Netanyahu, gave Israel a parting gift of $38 billion in military aid. So Obama was telling us something, that is that the U.S. attitude to Israel can weather these humiliations, can weather the political alignment with Netanyahu, and they'll continue to do business with Israel. Now, if you look at the detail, it's not even the detail. The two-state solution is only, it's an alibi for people doing nothing and continue to dispossess the Palestinians. Cheat me once, I blame you. Cheat me twice, it's my fault. And the Palestinians have suffered under Oslo. The myth of a two-state solution, while Israel expands day after week after month with new settlements, expanding existing settlements, demolishing Palestinian homes, and so on and so on. We know the story. So Biden is simply saying, look, Trump was kind of bizarre, Trump was grotesque, he wasn't perfectly rational in terms of US strategic interests, putting his own political interest before the bigger picture. Biden will be much more cunning, he'll be much more strategic, and he will strengthen the US alliance with Israel. And the Palestinians, well, look, $15 million for coronavirus is a very eloquent testimony to what the relationship's going to be. Israel has been starving Palestinians of coronavirus vaccines. This money is almost a gift to Israel, because Israel has, under international law, a duty of care to the people it militarily occupies. So, two-state solution, swap of, land swap between Palestine and Israel is simply ratifying the settlement building. The Israelis will take from this, carry on as we have done for decades. America will grumble, will complain sometimes, but we know that this two-state solution and some future land swap simply means they can continue to dispossess the Palestinian people. And it underlines the fact that this is a strategic, deep alliance which has weathered many storms since 1967. We have to remember, in 67, US aid to Israel rose by a quantum leap. Before 67, it was relatively modest. France and Britain were the main armorers for the apartheid state. After 67, when Israel showed it could crush the armies of Egypt and Syria and Jordan, that's when America started to pour in the aid, because Israel is a proxy for American power in the region. It's tied umbilically to Israel, to America, because Israel could not survive as the state that it is without this link to Israel. And as America begins to move towards a real existential threat, the Chinese threat, the rising power of China economically and militarily in the Pacific, actually, I think America's ties to Israel will become stronger, because it will delegate, it will subcontract the disciplining of states that America wants disciplined, and subcontract the support for very unstable states like the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, while America looks elsewhere. So the situation for the Palestinians looks as dire as it ever has done, paradoxically because of American weakness and therefore a greater reliance on its settler colonial project in the Middle East, Israel.
Sure, let's cross over now to Saeb Shaath. Mr. Shaath, our guest in Edinburgh, believes that the U.S. has ulterior motives. Give us your thoughts on that. And do you think that the United States, does it even have the credibility anymore to try and be an honest broker in this situation?
I totally agree with your guest. He's spot on in his analysis. This is the issue of the memo, is an internal policy within the Democratic Party, not even the American administration. Since the selection process in the Democratic Party was the progressive agreed to support Biden in the three issues he had to give in the foreign policy. One of them was the Obama's two-state solution, as they call it, in Palestine, which the memo talks about today. The second was the rejoining of the Paris Protocol for the global warming. The third is rejoining the Iran nuclear deal 5+1. Which is in 2018 Trump pulled out of. But let's go back. If Biden is genuine, and this memo is genuine, he should, the first thing to do, the first step to show he's genuine, and America doesn't want to be the biased always with the Zionist entity, is to relocate again the embassy back from Jerusalem al-Quds to Tel Aviv, where it was. That can send a storming message, which means the United States of America is after creating two-state solution in Palestine, not cheating the Palestinians again. I'm going to comment in here during the 2000 negotiation between Clinton and Yasser Arafat and Barack Obama. The Arafat, I heard him myself saying the Barack administration, the Zionist administration, were more flexible than the American administration regarding the issues in Palestine. So you understand the Israel is the colonialist settler project to dominate the region in the Middle East in behalf of the United States of America. And in here to agree more with your colleague, during the Obama's administration, which Biden was the vice president, Obama asked for freeze of settlement for 30 days, freeze of settlement, not more than 1 month. And in return, he offered a squadron of F-35 at the time, which was the La Crème project, and a lot of aid in military and for the government as well. The Zionist cabinet refused, and you wonder why they refuse such huge rewards. Because, as I said, they understand they are there in behalf of the United States of America. While they're freeing the United States of America's hands to deal with China and Russia, they are dominating the region. They making America is the big player in this strategic area and looting the resources in that area. So all of this talk is partly encouraging the Zionists to go for more than the deal of the century, because Biden himself declared that he's more Zionist than the Zionists. Even if he hates Netanyahu, who humiliated him and humiliated Obama in the Congress with 57 times a standing ovation for him in the Congress at the time, to destroy the process at the time of the Iran nuclear deal. The same thing will go. It's religiously the Americans attached to the Zionist entity.
All right, thanks a lot, gentlemen. We're going to leave it there. From the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Mr. Mick Napier joining us From Edinburgh, also thanks to Saeb Shaath, author and Middle East affairs expert, joining us from Belfast. With that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of Press TV's News Review, but do stay tuned. We've got more news to come.